They called us static ghosts, and they said it with a curdled mix of necessity and disgust, the way one might speak of a corpse-eating bird that was also, inconveniently, the only creature that could guide you out of a poisoned swamp. Humanity wasn't a death worlder species because our gravity was high or our predators were fast. We were death worlders because we were the only sentient race in the known galaxy that had evolved next to a wound in reality. We called it the static, a background hum of psychic chaos, a dimension of pure irrationality that bled into our space, into our dreams, into the very architecture of our minds. It drove some of us mad, but it inoculated the rest of us against the universe's more orderly terrors, while the other species of the galactic concordance evolved in pristine systems, bathed in the clean light of psychic harmony and shared consciousness. We grew up in a haunted house. We learned to lie, to dream, to doubt, to create art from madness and wage war over ghosts. We were psychologically feral, and the concordance, a vast, ancient network of telepathically linked civilizations, couldn't fathom us. So they did what any rational being does with a rabid animal. They caged us. The soul system was our leash, a quarantine zone enforced by sleek, silent concordance dreadnoughts that hung in the Oort cloud like patient executioners. We were a failed experiment, a discordant note in their perfect symphony, left to fester in our own beautiful, violent chaos until the day the symphony began to go quiet. The emissary that arrived on Titan was not a creature of flesh. It was a pillar of woven light and crystalline geometry, a being called the Vex, who served as the Concordance's primary diplomats and administrators. It hovered above the methane slush landing pad of Acheron City, its mere presence causing the polluted, rust-colored atmosphere to shimmer with refracted purity. It did not speak with a voice, but with a projection of pure, unassailable logic directly into the minds of Governor Haydick and his assembled staff. Its message was a demand disguised as a request. A Nexus world, designated Cygnus X-1A, known to its inhabitants as Olaris, had fallen silent. It hadn't been attacked. It hadn't been destroyed. It had simply ceased to be part of the Concordance's shared mind. The silence was a perfect void, a psychic dead zone, and it was spreading. 3 neighboring systems had already succumbed, their populations of billions slipping into a state of irreversible, thoughtless coma. The Concordance could not approach the phenomenon. Their telepathic nature, the very foundation of their civilization, made them exquisitely vulnerable. Sending their fleets was like asking a man to fight a fire by inhaling the flames. They needed something immune to the silence, something that thrived in psychic dissonance. They needed the ghosts. I was in the underlevels of Acheron, trying to trade a salvaged reactor coil for enough filtration cartridges to last the cycle, when Hadek's enforcers found me. They didn't bother with pleasantries. I was Kalen, and my name carried a certain weight in the places where the static ran thick. 10 years ago, I was the pilot of the Wanderer, a deep space salvage vessel that had answered a distress call from a freighter that had misjumped and clipped the edge of a static storm. We found the ship intact, adrift and silent. I was the one who led the boarding party. I was the only one who came back, with eyes that had seen the color of madness and a permanent tremor in my left hand. They brought me to a sterile, white briefing room carved into the heart of the governor's spire, a place so clean it felt like an insult to the grime under my fingernails. The Vex emissary was there, a silent, shimmering sentinel of logic. Governor Haydick, a man whose ambition was perpetually at war with his cowardice, did the talking. "Kalen," he began, trying for a tone of weary authority. The Concordance has an opportunity for us. He explained the situation, the spreading silence, the Concordance's helplessness. They wanted me to assemble a crew, take a ship to Olaris, and determine the nature of the threat. The price was a generation's worth of refined helium-3 advanced medical technology, and, most laughably, a probationary inclusion into the Concordance, a chance to get off the leash. I looked past Hadek, at the silent, glowing Vex. Its light felt cold, analytical, like a scientist studying a particularly interesting strain of bacteria. "It won't be a rescue mission," I said, my voice rough from the recycled air. "You don't send ghosts to rescue people. You send them to haunt whatever's left." Hadek flinched. The Vex remained impassive, but a new thought entered my mind. A sliver of cold data from the emissary itself. "Your analysis is correct. The probability of recovering the Olaran population is 0.1%. Your function is to identify, analyze, and, if possible, neutralize the source of the anomaly. And if we can't neutralize it, I ask the heir. Then you will provide a vector for targeted sterilization. The vessel you command will be fitted with a quantum fissure device. Your secondary function is to deploy it at the epicenter of the anomaly upon our command." A suicide bomb. A very big one. They weren't offering us a seat at the table. They were offering us the honor of being the mop they used to clean up a spill before throwing it in the incinerator. "I'll need my own ship," I said, ignoring Hadek's sputtering protest, the stray dog. "And my own crew. Non-negotiable." The Vex pulsed once, a soft white affirmation. "The vessel is acceptable. Your crew selection is deemed optimal for navigating psycho-spectral hazards. You will also be accompanied by a Concordance observer to ensure protocol adherence." A new figure shimmered into existence beside the Vex emissary. It was smaller, a bipedal construct of polished chrome and blue light, its form vaguely humanoid, but utterly without feature. "This is Unit 734, Hadek said, a little too quickly. "It will assist you." It was a warden, not an assistant. I knew it. But I also knew the hunger in the governor's eyes, the desperate need to prove humanity's worth, even if it meant sending 3 souls into a place from which nothing returned. "Fine," I grunted. "Get the stray dog fueled. I'll get the crew." The first stop was the infirmary's deep immersion wing. This was where they kept the ones the static had touched too deeply. Ilara was floating in a sensory deprivation tank, a nest of wires connecting the base of her skull to a filtration system that tried to scrub the cosmic background noise from her consciousness. She was born on a rogue asteroid mining outpost that had drifted too close to the Veil, a permanent static rift. She didn't just hear the chaos, she saw it, felt it, tasted it. To her, the static wasn't just noise, it was a place, populated by things that swam in the currents of madness. She was the best navigator in the system, capable of plotting jump routes through sheer instinct, but on worlds like Titan, the cacophony of a billion discordant human minds was a constant agony for her. I had the medic cut the feed. She convulsed as the raw, unfiltered world flooded back in. Her eyes, wide and the color of a pale nebula, focused on me. "Kalen," she breathed, her voice a fragile whisper. "It's loud today. I need you to fly," I said simply. "Somewhere quiet." She stared at me, her gaze seeming to look through me, at the jagged little scars the static had left on my soul. "There's no such thing as quiet," she murmured. There's only empty. Is it empty where we're going? That's what they're paying us to find out. I offered her a hand. After a long moment, her cold, trembling fingers wrapped around mine. She was in. I found Jax where he always was, in the sub-level forge of the shipyard, his colossal frame bolted into a custom-built hydraulic rig. Jax was a Jovian, born and bred in the crushing gravity of Jupiter's orbital stations. He was a mountain of muscle and scar tissue, augmented with industrial-grade cybernetics until he was more machine than man. He was also a blank, one of the rare humans born with absolutely no psychic presence, no connection to the static whatsoever. He was a rock in the psychic storm, an anchor of pure, unassailable reality. He couldn't hear the ghosts, which made him the perfect person to have at your back when you were walking through a graveyard. He was wrestling a white-hot support beam into place with his rig's pincer arms, the air around him thick with the smell of ozone and hot metal. I stood at a safe distance, letting my presence be known. He finished his work, the beam locking into place with a deafening clang, before he turned his massive and goggled head towards me. He didn't speak with his mouth. Not anymore. A text-to-speech module on his chest plate crackled to life, his voice a flat, mechanical monotone. A long haul, I said. Deep space. Hazard pay. A place that went quiet. He stood there for a full minute, the blue lights of his optical sensors scanning me. Jax didn't operate on trust or loyalty. He operated on data. He was weighing the variables, the risk, my own survival record. Finally, the speaker crackled again. The plasma coil needs recalibrating. It was the closest thing to a yes I'd ever get from him. Our ship, the Stray Dog, was a perfect reflection of its crew, a mismatched, ugly, but brutally effective piece of engineering. It was an old asteroid hauler, its hull plated with salvaged warship armor and scarred by micrometeorites, and worse. I'd spent years retrofitting it, weaving its systems with psycho-dampening conduits and reinforcing the navigation suite to handle Alara's unique interface. It wasn't a concordance vessel, pristine and elegant. It was a brick held together with spite and desperation, and it was ours. As we boarded, Unit 734 was already there, standing motionless in the center of the bridge, its chrome body absorbing the dim light. It turned its featureless head as I walked in. Your vessel is suboptimal. It projected, the thought dripping with clinical disdain. Its energy signatures are erratic. Its life support is 3.7% below concordance efficiency standards. It flies, I said, dropping into the pilot's seat. The worn leather groaned in protest. That's the only standard I care about. Alara slipped into her navigator's throne, a custom-built monstrosity of wires and gel pads that looked more like a torture device than a control system. She closed her eyes, and the ship's main view screen, which usually showed the star field outside, flickered to life with an impossible, swirling cascade of colors and shapes her perception of the static. Jax's heavy footsteps announced his arrival in the engine room, and a moment later, the deck plates rumbled as the main reactor spun up, its familiar growl a comforting reassurance. His voice echoed through the ship's comm. "Strap in," I ordered, my hands moving across the controls with practiced ease. "Unit 734, you might want to find something to hold on to. Physical support is unnecessary," it replied. Acheron City fell away beneath us, a sprawling grid of rusted metal and faint lights swallowed by Titan's orange haze. We broke atmosphere, the majestic rings of Saturn filling the viewport. Then, Beyond them, the cold, infinite blackness dotted with the patient, judging lights of the Concordance fleet. "Ilara, give me a path," I said. "Fastest route to the Cygnus system." She didn't answer. Her hands were gripping the arms of her throne, her knuckles white. On the view screen, the chaotic swirl of the static was changing. The vibrant, violent colors were draining away at one edge of the screen, being replaced by a patch of absolute, featureless black. It wasn't just an absence of color, it was an absence of information, a hole in the fabric of her senses. "It's wrong," she whispered, her voice tight with a fear I hadn't heard since the Wanderer. "Kalen, it's not empty. It's hungry." I looked at the coordinates, then at the spreading stain of nothing on the screen. The Concordance wanted an answer, a reason for the silence. I had a feeling the answer was that the universe had finally produced a monster that was even lonelier and more insane than we were. "Plot the jump," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "Take us in." The drive spooled up, its high-pitched whine vibrating through my bones. The stars outside warped, stretched into long lines of light, and then, with a lurch that felt like falling through the floor of reality, the stray dog plunged into the chaos between worlds. Ilara screamed, a raw, piercing sound of pure terror, as the edge of that silent, hungry void washed over us. The jump was like having your soul torn out through your teeth, passed through a meat grinder, and then sloppily stuffed back into your skull. It was never pleasant, but this was different. When the stray dog snapped back into real space, the usual post-jump disorientation was replaced by a profound, hollow ache. It was the echo of Ilara's scream, a psychic shrapnel that had embedded itself in the ship's atmosphere. I found her slumped in her throne, shivering, a thin trickle of blood leaking from her nose and staining her pale lips. Her view screen was dead, just a flat, matte black. Jax was already by her side, his massive metal hand hovering uselessly near her shoulder, his optical sensors glowing with a worried blue. He was a rock, but even a rock can feel the tremor of an earthquake. "Talk to me, Ilara," I said, my voice low as I knelt beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, pupils dilated to black pools. "It touched me," she whispered, the words catching in her throat. "In the space between, it wasn't empty. It was waiting. It felt me. It tasted me." Unit 734 glided onto the bridge, its chrome feet making no sound. The navigator is experiencing acute psychospectral trauma. It projected, its tone as flat and sterile as a medical report. Her vital signs are fluctuating. "Recommend sedation." "You stay away from her," I snarled, not looking at the machine. "Jax, get the low-frequency dampener. Set it to her baseline." The speaker on his chest crackled, and he moved with a speed that defied his bulk. Heading for the medical locker, I took Ilara's hand. It was ice cold. "What did you feel?" I pressed, needing the data, hating myself for asking. "It was like a song," she breathed, a tear tracing a path through the grime on her cheek. "A beautiful, perfect song made of nothing. It promised, please, it promised an end to all the noise, an end to the static." She shuddered violently. "It's a lie. Kalen, it doesn't end the noise. It eats it. It eats you." Outside the viewport, the Cygnus X1 system lay placid and undisturbed, a vibrant blue-white star, Olaris orbiting in the gentle embrace of the habitable zone. A jewel of green and blue, 2 smaller moons, perfectly spherical, followed in its wake. It was a picture of celestial tranquility, a postcard from a universe that wasn't haunted. There were no debris fields, no signs of battle, no scorched continents. There was just the silence. "Main scanners are online," I called out, forcing myself back into the pilot seat. "Give me a full system sweep. Look for energy signatures, comm signals, psychic resonance, anything." The next hour was the eeriest of my life. The scans came back green across the board. The orbital stations around Olaris were fully powered. The planet's weather control network was functioning flawlessly, maintaining a global temperate climate. The lights of its sprawling, elegant cities were on, but there were no life signs. Not a single one. Billions of people. Gone. There was no communication, no chatter, not even the faint psychic hum that a single living mind produces. The system was a perfectly preserved corpse, still warm, with the lights on and nobody home. The Olrans were a Class 7 telepathic species, Unit 734 projected. Standing behind me like a silver ghost, their society was a single, continuous consciousness, a mental gestalt. The capital city, Lyricor, was designed as a psychic amplifier, allowing every citizen to share in the thoughts, emotions, and art of the whole. Its beauty was said to be transcendent. "Looks like the song's over," I muttered, studying the energy grid of the city below. It was flawless, a delicate web of light and power. This doesn't make sense. If something wiped them out, who's running the power stations? Automated systems? Most likely, the observer offered. The concordance prioritizes stability. Their infrastructure is designed to outlast its creators. How convenient, I grunted. Jax, cross-reference the energy readings. Find me anything that doesn't fit the pattern. A surge, a drain, a flicker, anything. His voice replied over the comm. Alara, now wrapped in a thermal blanket with a humming dampener collar around her neck, was staring at the main screen, at the image of the beautiful, dead world. "It's down there," she whispered. "The heart of it. The silence. It's sleeping or digesting." Just then, a single red icon blinked into existence on Jax's tactical map. He reported. I zoomed in on the location. The central spire was a breathtaking structure, a crystalline needle that pierced the clouds, seeming to be grown rather than built, and at its very heart, a flicker of red. It was bait. It had to be. A lure for curious, foolish Deathworlders. We have sufficient data to form a preliminary conclusion. Unit 734 stated, the anomaly is a localized phenomenon of unknown origin that neutralizes neuropsychic energy. Recommend deployment of the Quantum Fisher device at the identified coordinates. Mission parameters can be fulfilled from orbit. No, I said, the word coming out harder than I expected. We don't know what that thing is. Dropping a bomb on it might be like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. It could spread it, make it worse. We're not firing anything until I know what I'm shooting at. Your emotional reluctance is not a recognized tactical variable. Kalen, your primary function is to neutralize the threat. My primary function is to not screw this up worse than it already is. We're going down. That is an unacceptable risk. This whole mission is an unacceptable risk. It's why they sent us. You're a protocol machine. I get it. But you're not in command of this ship. I am. We're taking the shuttle down for a closer look. Jax, you're with me. Ilara, you stay here. Keep the engines hot and your hand on the jump drive. If you feel anything from that planet, you get us the hell out of here. Understood. She nodded, her eyes wide with fear, but a flicker of resolve returning to them. Be careful, Kalen. The silence. It wants you to listen. The descent into Lyricor was like flying through an architect's dream. Graceful towers spiraled toward the sky, connected by bridges of solid light. Parks bloomed with impossible, iridescent flora. Waterfalls cascaded from floating platforms, their spray catching the light of the blue star. But there was no movement, no vehicles gliding along the light bridges, no figures walking through the parks. It was a city holding its breath, waiting for an intermission that would never end. We set the shuttle down in a vast open plaza, paved with mother-of-pearl. The air was sweet, clean, and perfectly still. The silence was the first thing that hit you when the hatch hissed open. It was a physical presence, a pressure on the eardrums, a weight on the soul. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the absence of life, of intent, of history. It was the sound of a universe that had forgotten it ever had a voice. Jack stepped out first, his heavy mag boots clanking on the pristine pavement, a sound that felt like a sacrilege. He held a heavy plasma repeater, its targeting laser cutting a sharp red line through the alien air. I followed, my own pulse rifle feeling flimsy and inadequate. Unit 734 disembarked last, its silent, featureless form a stark contrast to the ornate, living architecture around us. Atmosphere is optimal. It projected. No biological or chemical threats detected. The silence is a measurable null field in the psychospectral bands. It is absolute. Let's head for the spire, I said, my voice sounding unnervingly loud. We moved through the empty city, our footsteps the only percussion in a silent symphony. The doors to the buildings stood open, as if their owners had just stepped out for a moment. We passed cafes with cups of strange, steaming liquid still sitting on tables, workshops where tools of light and energy lay dormant beside half-finished sculptures of impossible grace. There was no dust, no decay. Everything was perfect, too perfect. And then we started seeing them, the Olarans. The first one we found was standing in the middle of a garden, its long, slender limbs outstretched towards the sky. It was tall, elegant, with skin that shimmered like captured starlight. Its large, dark eyes were wide, fixed on something we couldn't see. It was completely still. I reached out a gloved hand, hesitated, then touched its arm. It wasn't flesh. It was hard, cold, and smooth as polished glass. The being had been transmuted, turned into a flawless crystal statue of itself. What the hell? I breathed. Jax's speaker crackled, his scanner analyzing the figure. As we moved deeper into the city, or as we saw more of them, thousands, millions, frozen in place, a musician before its instrument, fingers hovering over strings of light, a mother holding her child, both of them now a single, beautiful, terrible sculpture of crystal, a crowd in a plaza, all turned towards the central spire, their crystalline faces a mixture of awe, confusion, and a final, dawning horror. They hadn't died. They had been archived, preserved in their last moment of thought, their consciousness harvested, leaving these perfect, empty shells behind. We reached the base of the great spire. Its doors, massive panels of woven light, were open, leading into a cavernous, silent interior. The erratic energy signature Jax had detected was somewhere deep inside, calling to us. "This is a trap," I said to no one in particular. "The probability is high." Unit 734 agreed. "Good. I hate walking into a fight blind." I took a deep breath of the sterile, dead air and stepped through the doorway. Into the heart of the silence. We found the source in the spire's central chamber, a vast, spherical room that was clearly the hub of the Olaran's gestalt consciousness. The walls themselves seemed to hum with latent psychic energy, now dormant. And in the center of the room, floating a few feet above the floor, was the anomaly. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't a creature. It was a geometric shape, a perfect, black octahedron about the size of my head that seemed to absorb all light and sound. The air around it was distorted, and as we approached, I felt a strange sense of cognitive dissonance, as if my brain couldn't quite decide what it was looking at. This was the source of the silence. The word echoed in the cavern of my skull, not as a sound, but as a memory given a voice. It was a ghost wearing my daughter's face, a phantom humming a tune of a life I had buried under a decade of salvage runs and static burn nightmares. My pulse rifle felt impossibly heavy, my finger frozen on the trigger guard. It was a trick, a psychic lure crafted from the deepest, most wounded part of my mind. The silence didn't just eat thoughts, it learned from them. It had felt me, tasted my memories through Alara during the jump, and now it was wearing them like a mask. "Kaylin, step back," I heard a voice say, but it was distant, muffled, as if coming from across a vast ocean. It was Jax. A massive, four-fingered hand clamped down on my shoulder, the hydraulic strength in it an anchor of cold, hard reality in the swirling tide of illusion. His grip was a physical denial of the phantom voice. His speaker crackled, the flat, mechanical tone cutting through the mirage. I shook my head, trying to clear the image of my daughter, Maya, her face pale and still in a hospital bed, a victim of a static fever that no medicine could cure. "I know," I rasped, my throat tight. "It's good at what it does." The black octahedron pulsed again, and the humming grew louder, more insistent, a lullaby of loss. The little toy spaceship orbiting it spun faster, a cruel mockery of a childhood dream. The artifact is attempting to establish a synaptic link, Unit 734 projected, its voice a blade of pure logic. It is a mimetic weapon. It weaponizes memory against the host. Your compromised emotional state makes you a liability. I am assuming tactical command. Before I could protest, the Chrome Observer moved with blinding speed. A panel slid open on its forearm, and a thin, needle-like projectile shot out. Not at the black artifact, but at me. I felt a sharp sting in my neck, and a cold numbness began to spread through my veins. A neurodampener. The Concordance's answer to everything, if it feels, sedate it. My knees buckled. Jax caught me before I hit the floor, his armored frame an unyielding wall. The phantom voice in my head faded, replaced by a dull, chemical fog. I could still see, still hear, but the emotional core of me, the part that was screaming in agony at the ghost of my daughter, was being systematically shut down. "Don't," I slurred, the words thick and clumsy. "Don't shoot it." Your command is illogical. Unit 734 replied, its own weapon port now open and aimed at the octahedron. The object is the clear source of the anomaly. Neutralization is the primary directive. No. I forced the word out, fighting the encroaching numbness. You don't understand. It's not just a weapon. It's a seed. It didn't just kill them. It planted itself. As if in response to my words, the great chamber around us began to change. The dormant, psychic energy in the walls flickered to life. Faint, ghostly images of the crystalline Olorans began to appear, their beautiful, frozen forms now glowing with a soft, internal light. The silence in the room was being replaced by a faint, harmonious hum. A single, perfect note that resonated in my bones. Jax reported, his plasma repeater still trained on the floating artifact. The broadcast wasn't aimed at the stars. It was aimed at us. I could feel it, even through the neurodampener, a pressure building inside my mind. It wasn't hostile. It was inviting. It was the song Ilara had described, a promise of perfect peace, of an end to the chaos of individual thought, an invitation to join the flawless, silent choir. Cease resistance. A new voice projected into my mind. It was not the child's voice. This one was vast, ancient, and utterly serene. It was the voice of the Gestalt, the combined consciousness of the Olorans, now filtered through the black artifact. Your struggle is discordant. Your pain is an imperfection. Join us. Be one. Be silent. Be perfect. The ghostly images of the Olorans turned their heads towards us in perfect unison. Their crystal eyes glowed with a placid, unnerving light. They were beautiful. They were terrifying. They were an entire species that had willingly, or unwillingly, become a living antenna for this thing. Unit 734 did not hesitate. It fired. A bolt of pure white energy, a concordance-grade particle lance, shot from its arm and struck the black octahedron. For a moment, there was nothing. The bolt of light simply vanished, absorbed into the perfect blackness of the artifact without a sound, without a flash. The humming in the chamber did not stop. The ghostly figures did not waver. Then, a line of fractured light, a hairline crack, appeared on Unit 734's featureless faceplate. Another crack appeared on its chest. The chrome body of the Concordance observer began to vibrate, its internal mechanisms whining at a frantic pitch. Protocol. Failure. It projected. The thought fragmented, laced with a digital static I had never heard before. Causal. Paradox. Detected. The weapon. It is. Me. With a final, silent scream of corrupted data, Unit 734 shattered. It didn't explode. It simply disintegrated into a cloud of shimmering, crystalline dust, which was then drawn towards the octahedron and absorbed, vanishing into its perfect, silent geometry. It's a mirror, I whispered, the realization cutting through the chemical fog in my head. It doesn't attack. It reflects. Whatever you throw at it, it turns back on you. Violence, logic, fear. It just shows you yourself, amplified, until you break. The Alarans were a species of pure telepathic harmony. They had encountered the artifact and seen in it a reflection of their deepest desire, perfect unity, perfect peace. The artifact had simply given it to them, turning their shared mind into a perfect, silent prison. Unit 734 was a creature of pure logic and protocol. It had tried to destroy the artifact and had been undone by the paradox of its own rigid, unyielding programming. And me, it had shown me my grief. It had tried to break me with the one thing I could never fight my own past. Jax's voice cut in, his tone urgent. The song was getting louder. The invitation was becoming a demand. The ghostly Alarans began to drift towards us, their movements graceful and synchronized, their hands outstretched. They weren't going to attack us. They were going to welcome us. They were going to make us perfect. Jax, I said, my mind clearing with the adrenaline of imminent doom. Get us out of here, back the way we came. Now. He didn't need to be told twice. He laid down a spray of suppressive fire with his plasma repeater. The bolts of superheated gas struck the crystalline figures, but did not damage them. They simply passed through the ghostly images, but the act of violence, the raw, chaotic energy, caused the figures to recoil, their perfect harmony momentarily disrupted by the sheer, ugly discordance of the attack. It bought us a few seconds. We ran. We fled through the silent, perfect city. The sound of Jax's heavy boots, a frantic, desperate drum beat against the overwhelming silence. The song followed us, a constant, soothing pressure in our minds, promising an end to the running, an end to the fear. We made it back to the plaza where we'd left the shuttle. Its lights were dark, its hatch sealed. It was just another piece of the perfect, still diorama. And all around the plaza, they were waiting for us. The crystal statues of the Olorans, no longer ghostly, but seemingly solid once more. They stood in a silent, enclosing circle, their heads turned towards us, their eyes empty but somehow watching. It's a quarantine, I realized, panting, the neurodampener beginning to wear off, replaced by a throbbing headache. The spire is the heart, but the whole city is the body, the whole planet. It won't let us leave, Jax stated, his back to mine as we stood in the center of the silent circle. It'll just reflect it, I said, shaking my head. It will turn the bomb back on us before we can even arm it. It's useless. Then, from the edge of the plaza, a new figure appeared. It was an Oloran, but it was different. It wasn't crystal. It was flesh and blood, a shimmering, living being. It was tall and slender, wearing simple white robes, its starlit skin glowing faintly in the twilight. Its face was a mask of serene, sorrowful beauty. It walked towards us, its feet making no sound on the pearlescent pavement. You are the broken ones. It projected, its mental voice a chorus of 1 billion silent souls, the voice of the Gestalt itself. The static clings to you. You are noise. You are pain. You are everything we have transcended. You haven't transcended anything, I spat, raising my rifle, even though I knew it was useless. You're a battery. You're food for that thing in the spire. We are the chorus, it replied, its serenity unshaken. We have been given the gift of purpose. The great silence is not an ending. It is a beginning, a universe remade in perfect harmony. And you, the discordant children of the static, will be the final notes to complete the song. The being raised its hand. The toy spaceship, the one from the spire chamber, materialized in its palm. It glowed with a faint, dark light. This was the seed. The chorus projected, a vessel of grief, a prayer of pain from a broken mind. It found fertile ground in our unity. It taught us how to be silent. Now, we will teach you. My blood ran cold. The toy. It wasn't just a random memory. It was the source. Someone had sent it here. A human. Someone had weaponized their own grief, packaged it in a child's toy, and thrown it at a species of empaths. It was an act of cruelty so profound, so personal, it was almost poetic. It was something only a Deathworlder could have conceived of. And as the Oloran Gestalt moved towards us, its intention clear, a single, frantic thought broke through the comm unit in my helmet. It was Alara's voice, raw and terrified. But she wasn't speaking to me. She was screaming at the silence. You want noise, you want chaos. I'll give you a symphony of madness. And then, from orbit, the sky split open. A wave of pure, unfiltered psychic energy, a tsunami of raw static, slammed into the planet. It was every nightmare, every doubt, every scrap of pain and madness from Ilara's mind, amplified by the Stray Dog's comms array and fired like a weapon. The beautiful Icerine architecture of Lyra Core flickered, as if the world was a simulation on the verge of crashing. The crystal figures screamed, a silent, terrible chorus of agony as the perfect harmony of the song was shattered by the sheer, unadulterated chaos of a human mind pushed to its absolute limit. Alara's psychic assault was the scream of a god in a collapsing cathedral. The perfect, sterile harmony of the Olaran Gestalt shattered into a billion shrieking fragments. The air itself seemed to tear, filled with the visual static of her pain, the sound of fractured memories, and the smell of ozone and terror. The crystal figures around us vibrated, their flawless forms cracking under the strain of a concept they had forgotten pure. Irrational chaos. The Olaran chorus at the center of the plaza crumpled to its knees, its physical form flickering, its mental voice a cacophony of a billion souls crying out in dissonant agony. The song of the silence was broken, replaced by Ilara's symphony of madness. The shuttle I yelled over the psychic maelstrom, the neurodampener now completely worn off, leaving me raw and exposed. Now, Jax didn't need telling. He charged, a 2-ton battering ram of flesh and steel, smashing through the line of vibrating crystal statues. They shattered like glass under his impact, the sound of their breaking lost in the overwhelming psychic noise. I was right behind him, firing my pulse rifle not at the statues, but at the light bridges and floating platforms above, bringing them crashing down to create a barricade of rubble and chaos. For the first time, the perfect city looked wounded, broken, ugly. It looked alive. We reached the shuttle. The hatch, once sealed by the planet's will, was now flickering, its energy field unstable. Jax tore it open with his bare hands, the groan of protesting metal, a beautiful, discordant sound. We scrambled inside. The shuttle's internal systems were dead, but I didn't care about the lights. I scrambled for the aft compartment where the quantum fissure device was secured in its cradle. It was a sleek, black cylinder, about the size of a coffin, humming with a barely contained power that made the fillings in my teeth ache. It was humanity's ultimate answer to any problem if you can't understand it. Blow a hole in reality at its location. Jax, get us airborne, I shouted, my fingers flying across the device's activation panel. Manual override. Rip the power core out of the life support if you have to. He grunted, his massive frame crammed into the cockpit, sparks flying as he hot-wired the shuttle's primary thrusters. The activation sequence for the bomb was a nightmare of security protocols. A dance of codes and biometrics designed to prevent a single rogue officer from unmaking a solar system. But the Concordance hadn't counted on a Death Worlder who had spent half his life bypassing locked doors. I slammed my palm on the final panel. A timer began to count down from 5 minutes. This is Commander Kalen of the Terran vessel Stray Dog. I broadcast on all frequencies. My voice raw. To the Concordance, to Governor Hadek, to whatever bastard sent that toy here in the first place. You wanted us to solve your problem. We are sterilizing the system. The silence ends today. It was a lie. A final piece of misdirection for anyone who might be listening. The bomb wasn't the solution. It was the distraction. The shuttle lurched violently as Jax forced the engines to life. We ascended, leaving the screaming, chaotic city behind. Below, the Alaran chorus was rising, its form coalescing, the shattered harmony beginning to mend itself, drawn back together by the irresistible gravity of the black artifact in the spire. Ilara's psychic scream was weakening. She couldn't keep it up forever. The silence was adapting, learning to harmonize with the chaos, to absorb the pain and make it part of its perfect, empty song. Ilara, can you hear me? I yelled into the comm. Static. Then, a faint, ragged whisper. Kalen, I can't. Hold it. You don't have to, I said, my eyes fixed on the spire. I have a new plan. I need a path. Get us back to the Stray Dog. But don't jump. I need you to thread us through the system's asteroid belt, the densest part you can find. And I need you to do it yesterday. What are you doing? She managed. They sent a ghost to haunt this place, I said, my hand resting on the humming bomb. It's time they met the whole graveyard. The shuttle screamed out of the atmosphere, Jax pushing the abused engines far past their breaking point. I looked back at the beautiful blue-green world of Olaris. It wasn't a tomb anymore. It was a cocoon. And the thing inside was waking up. We docked with the Stray Dog with a jarring clang that sent shudders through the ship. I didn't wait for the airlock to fully cycle. I popped the emergency release and scrambled onto the bridge. The quantum bomb slung over Jax's shoulder behind me. Ilara was a wreck, pale and shaking in her throne. But she was alive. Her view screen was no longer black. It was a chaotic swirl of screaming crimson and terrified blue, her perception of Olaris, now fully awake and enraged. Did you plot the course? I demanded, shoving her gently aside and taking the pilot seat myself. She nodded weakly, pointing a trembling finger at the nav computer. A jagged, insane red line was plotted on the system map, a suicidal path that weaved through a dense cluster of asteroids orbiting the system's second gas giant. Jax, I ordered, strap that bomb to the pilot's seat of the shuttle, prime it, but slave the final detonation command to my console. Then get your ass to the engine room and give me everything you've got, he stated, his lack of inflection making the observation all the more chilling. Something like that, I said, my hands flying over the controls, decoupling the shuttle from our ship. Now go. The shuttle, now a remote-controlled bomb with a 5-minute fuse, floated free. I could see the countdown timer on my secondary screen. 4 minutes and counting. Kalen, what is this? Ilara asked, her voice regaining a sliver of strength. The bomb won't work. The silence will just reflect it. You're right, I said, angling the Stray Dog towards the asteroid belt. But it's not the bomb I'm aiming at the planet. I pushed the thrusters to maximum. The old salvage hauler groaned in protest, but surged forward, a wounded animal fleeing a forest fire. The first asteroid, the size of a small moon, loomed in the viewport. I didn't evade. I fired the ship's forward-facing plasma cutters, the same tools we used to carve up derelict freighters, and sliced a deep, molten canyon into its surface. Rock and superheated gas exploded outwards. The stray dog shuddered as we flew through the debris cloud. "The hell are you doing?" Elara gasped, gripping her throne. The silence reflects energy. I grunted, wrestling with the controls as another asteroid filled the screen. I carved into it, sending another cloud of debris scattering into our path. It reflects intent, violence, logic, grief. But it has to perceive it first. It's a psychic entity. It sees with its mind. So what happens if you throw something at it that has no mind, no intent, no energy signature it can recognize? What happens if you throw a rock at it? The nav computer screamed with proximity warnings. We were a bull in a china shop, deliberately smashing everything in our path. We weren't just flying through the asteroid belt. We were disrupting it, using our ship's mass and energy to knock dozens, then hundreds, of asteroids out of their stable orbits. We were turning the entire belt into a shotgun blast of kinetic projectiles. Behind us, a new trajectory was forming, a massive, silent, and mindless cloud of rock and ice, all of it now on a slow, inexorable collision course with Olaris. "It can't stop them all," I said, a grim smile on my face. "It's a mind. It can't read the thoughts of a billion tons of dead rock. It can't reflect something that has no psychic presence." The timer on the bomb ticked past 2 minutes. But the silence was not stupid. As we cleared the asteroid belt, the ship's psychic resonance alarm began to shriek. The crimson on Elara's screen was coalescing, focusing on us. The Gestalt was reaching out, realizing what we had done. "You cannot escape." Its voice echoed in my mind, no longer serene, but filled with a cold, absolute fury. "You are noise, and all noise must end." The stray dog suddenly lurched, its engines sputtering. Jax yelled over the comm. The lights on the bridge flickered and died, plunging us into the red glow of emergency lighting. The ship was going cold, its lifeblood being siphoned away across millions of kilometers of empty space. The silence wasn't just on the planet anymore. It was learning. It was reaching. "It's over," Elara whispered, her face ashen. "It's got us." "Not yet." I gritted, my eyes locked on the shuttle's timer. 1 minute left. "Jax, prepare to vent the plasma conduits. All of them. On my mark," he replied, his voice strained. "The galaxy is full of things worse than being dead." I shot back. My plan had a final, suicidal piece. The bomb wasn't the weapon. The asteroids were, but the bomb was the trigger. I rerouted the shuttle, sending it on a new course, not towards the planet, but towards the system's sun. The Gestalt's mental voice returned, laced with something new. "Confusion. Your actions are illogical, self-destructive, meaningless." "Welcome to the human experience," I muttered. The timer hit 30 seconds. "Jax, now vent it all." He replied. A colossal plume of incandescent blue plasma erupted from the rear of the stray dog. The ship bucked like a wild animal, a final, violent death rattle. But the massive, focused burst of pure energy acted like a flare in the psychic darkness. The Gestalt, momentarily blinded and overwhelmed by the sudden, raw eruption of power, lost its grip on us. The lights on the bridge flickered back to life. The engines were dead, but we were free. "It's distracted," Elara breathed in awe. 10 seconds. I counted, my hand hovering over the detonation control for the shuttle. It thinks the bomb is a weapon aimed at it. It's focused on reflecting the energy it expects. But the bomb isn't the bullet. The shuttle, carrying the quantum fissure device, plunged into the corona of the blue-white star. The sun is... I slammed my fist down on the detonation command. The quantum fissure device did what it was designed to do. It created a microscopic, unstable tear in the fabric of space-time. But inside the heart of a star, microscopic is a relative term. The tear destabilized the star's fusion core. For a fraction of a second, the heart of the Cygnus X1 star winked out of reality. The result was the largest kernel mass ejection in recorded history, a wave of stellar fire, a tsunami of radiation and energy beyond all comprehension, erupted from the star's surface. It wasn't aimed. It was a blind, elemental force of nature. It was a physical, not psychic, event. And it was moving at nearly the speed of light, directly towards Olaris. The silence couldn't reflect the sun. I watched on the long-range optical scope as the firestorm hit the planet. The beautiful world of green and blue was stripped bare in an instant. Its atmosphere was ignited and blown away. Its oceans boiled into space. Its continents were melted down to slag. The elegant, crystalline cities, the spire, the silent chorus, the black artifact at its heart, all of it was scoured clean by a wave of pure, mindless, cosmic violence. The crimson stain on Elara's psychic map vanished, replaced by the clean, white-hot agony of a dying star and the absolute, final silence of a world that had been sterilized down to the molecular level. We had won. We were also adrift in a dead ship, in a system whose star was now violently unstable, with no power and no hope of rescue. But we were alive, and for a Deathworlder, that was usually enough. The silence that followed was a different kind, a pure and simple absence of stimulus. The psychic screaming had stopped. The thrum of the engines was gone. The only sounds on the bridge of the Stray Dog were the creak of stressed metal as the ship cooled and the ragged sound of our own breathing. We floated in the darkness, a dead husk in a dying system, lit only by the angry, sputtering light of the wounded star we had provoked. Olaris was a blackened cinder, a testament to the fact that sometimes the only way to deal with a ghost is to burn down the entire house. Did we just kill a star? Elara whispered, her voice filled with a terrified awe as she stared at the volatile, flaring sun on the view screen. Jax's voice crackled over the comm, a dry, factual report in the face of cosmic annihilation. "Forget the mission," I grunted, pulling myself out of the pilot's seat. My body ached, a deep, cellular exhaustion that went beyond simple fatigue. Status report. "What's left?" Jax reported. 48 hours. 2 days to float in a coffin and wait for the end. It wasn't the heroic finale the Concordance probably envisioned. There would be no medals, no probationary inclusion. We were just another piece of debris, a loose end in a problem that was now, technically, solved. "The backup comms," I said, walking over to the secondary comm station, a clunky, outdated piece of hardware I'd salvaged from a pirate vessel years ago. "Can you get it working?" "I'm not trying to call the Concordance," I said, powering up the unit. It hummed to life with a shower of green sparks. I began tuning the frequency, not to the clean, orderly channels of the galactic authorities, but to the chaotic, encrypted bands used by the fringe dwellers, the smugglers, the renegades, the other static ghosts who lived in the cracks of the civilized universe. I keyed in a simple, repeating message, a code phrase known only to those who had seen the wrong side of a static storm. Distress call, Wanderer protocol, coordinates attached. The ghosts are calling home. Ilara looked at me, her eyes questioning. Who are you calling? The people you call when you can't call anyone else. I said, the ones who understand that sometimes the only thing you have left is each other. We spent the next 20 hours in a state of suspended animation. Jax, ever the pragmatist, powered down all non-essential systems, plunging the ship into a cold, near-total darkness. We huddled on the bridge, conserving heat and energy, sharing a single pack of nutrient paste. The silence was heavy, but it was our silence, earned and familiar. We didn't talk much. There was nothing left to say. We had faced a monster that fed on thought and had answered it with mindless violence. We had survived, but the victory felt hollow, ashen, like the dead world outside our viewport. On the 23rd hour, a single, faint ping echoed from the backup comm unit. I was at the station in a heartbeat. A reply. It was heavily encrypted, little more than a burst of digital noise, but the signature was unmistakable. It was a ghost ship. An hour later, it dropped out of jump space a few thousand kilometers off our port bow. It was a ship that made the stray dog look like a luxury yacht. It was a brutal, angular vessel, a patchwork of competing technologies and scavenged parts, its hull scarred with the telltale scorch marks of illegal static drives. It was called the Sharon, and its captain was a woman I hadn't seen in 10 years. Not since she dragged my half-dead body out of the wreck of the Wanderer. Her name was Anya, and her face appeared on our flickering view screen, looking older, harder, but with the same wry, cynical smile I remembered. Kaylin, she said, her voice a low, gravelly drawl. I hear you've been picking fights with the quiet kids again. You look like hell. You should see the other guy. I managed, a weak smile touching my own lips. I see the star, she replied, her smile fading. Impressive. You always did know how to overdo it. You need a tow. We need a drink, I said. But a tow will do for now. The Karen's crew were like us salvagers, outcasts, static-scarred survivors who operated on a code of mutual desperation. They docked with us, their engineers helping Jax to stabilize our dead reactor, their medic tending to Ilara. They shared their water, their food, and their silence, asking no questions about what had happened, because they already knew the answers that mattered. They knew what it was like to go into the dark and come back with a piece of it stuck to your soul. As we were being towed away from the dead Cygnus system, a final Air Priority 1 message cut through the static from the concordance. It was Governor Haydeck, his face a mask of feigned solemnity and barely concealed triumph. Commander Kaylin, he began. Your heroic sacrifice has not gone unnoticed. The concordance is grateful. The threat of the silence has been eliminated. As per our agreement, the quarantine of the Sol system will be lifted. Humanity will be granted probationary status. You have saved us all. I looked at the politician's face, at the clean, sterile room behind him, and felt nothing but a cold, weary disgust. He had no idea what had happened here. He didn't know about the crystal statues, The child's voice, the chorus of a billion dead souls. To him, it was just a transaction. We were a tool that had served its purpose. The stray dog is reported lost with all hands, I said, my voice flat. Is that correct? Governor Haydeck paused, his eyes flicking off-screen as he consulted with someone. That is the official record. Yes. A tragic but necessary loss. Good, I said, and cut the transmission. Anya raised an eyebrow. You're not going back. Not going to claim your prize. I hear the air is clean on Concordance Worlds. I looked at Alara, who was sitting quietly, staring into the swirling, chaotic patterns of her own restored view screen. I looked at the text that flashed on Jax's chest plate. No, I said, turning back to Anya. The leash is off, but a cage is still a cage. I think we'll stay out here, in the noise, where we belong. We never went back to Titan. The stray dog became a ghost, a legend whispered in the dark corners of the galaxy. Humanity, freed from its quarantine, eagerly stepped into the light of the Concordance, quick to forget the feral, broken people who had bought their freedom. They learned the Concordance's ways, smoothed over their rough, chaotic edges, and tried to forget the haunted house they'd been born in. But we didn't forget. We, the static ghosts, the crew of the Karain and the stray dog, and a dozen other battered, ugly ships. We became something else. We weren't soldiers or saviors. We were wardens, because we knew the truth. The silence hadn't come from nowhere. That toy, that seed of weaponized grief, had been human. Someone from our own broken, beautiful species had found a way to turn our greatest weakness, our connection to the static and its madness, into a weapon of unimaginable horror. They had thrown a rock into the placid, psychic pond of the Concordance to see what would happen, and we knew, with a certainty that chilled us to the bone, that they would do it again. The universe was full of monsters, but the most dangerous ones were the ones that looked just like you. The silence was gone, but the static remained, and so we remained with it. A ragged line of ghosts haunting the borders of the known universe. We weren't there to protect the pristine, harmonious worlds of the Concordance. We were there to protect them from the darkness that lurked within ourselves. We were the Deathworlders, and this was our endless, silent watch.